outside for great Americans, people that want to come down and they want to protest at the court and they want to protest peacefully. We have more police presence here than anyone's ever seen. For blocks, you can't get near this courthouse. And yet you have nobody up at a college where you have very radical people wanting to rip the colleges down, the universities down. And that's a shame. But it all starts with Joe Biden.
Donald Trump speaking before he enters court for a hearing over a gag order in his New York criminal trial. Interesting there. And I'm standing by here with our chief legal affairs correspondent Paula Reed and CNN anchor Caitlin Collins. That was 100% politics. Not a single mention of this trial other than to complain about the fact that people who may want to demonstrate for him haven't been allowed near the courthouse. The New York Times reporting that he's been upset that he hasn't seen more pro-Trump demonstrators near the courthouse for these hearings.
Yeah, but that's not true, because we've been outside the courthouse. Yeah. We've broadcasted from there multiple times, and there are protesters allowed outside. The courthouse is still open. People can also go in and watch the hearing. There just aren't that many of his supporters here, and that's something that we have been told has frustrated him as he is driven to court every day. I mean, yesterday he was pretty actively encouraging people to come. He started posting around 7 a.m. And clearly, now 2 days in a row, he's not happy with what's happening outside. His other comments there were criticizing President Biden for what he said about the protests that we're seeing on college campuses, including Columbia, about it wasn't essentially. The critics were saying it wasn't a strong enough statement on, the anti-Semitic comments that were being made by some of them. And that's what he was really kind of using this as a campaign stop for him today, as he's been lamenting the fact that he's in court and not on the campaign trail.
Oh, he also said that President Biden is no friend to Israel and no friend to the Arab world.
Which I think progressive Democrats would say he's too much of a friend to Israel.
This is, I would expect, exactly how his lawyers would prefer that he use this time, right? You have the world's media gathered here. We stopped. We listened. Campaign. Speak to your supporters. Attack your political adversaries. Please don't make this case any more complicated and messy than it already is. Because there is a chance that he may not be convicted here. And all of these gag order hearings, the gag order violations, not only do they antagonize the judge, the witnesses, possibly the jury, if they're aware of it, they just make for more work for his lawyers. So I'm sure that they would prefer that he use his platform exactly this way and not taking shots at Michael Cohen or the jury.
Well, he's going to a hearing over a gag order over things that he says. It would have been something had he commented about the judge on the way into that hearing.
And not terribly surprising if he had, because he can comment about the judge. He can comment about the district attorney, Alvin Bragg. Now, I would not recommend anyone attack a judge you are about to appear before, but Trump takes obviously a very different approach. That's within the gag order bounds. But he has so many times repeatedly violated the gag order that to hear him just use this for politics, I'm sure it's a relief to his lawyers going into this hearing.
It's also just probably the first time that he's come out and spoken to the cameras and not talked about the case in and of itself.
I was trying to decide if I remember him doing this where he didn't speak about the case at all.
I can't remember one time where he's come out and he's talked about other cases, but he's typically also woven in something about Alvin Bragg or the judge. Yeah. And so the question, of course, is, what his team has said to him, going into this gag order hearing, knowing that, there are likely violations of this gag order. You can read the gag order and see what Trump has said and deduce for yourself.
And just from a political standpoint, he complains that he has to be here, not on the campaign trail. He really hasn't been on the campaign trail anyway that much the last few weeks.
He hasn't had a ton of events since Super Tuesday even. He did try to have a rally in North Carolina on Saturday. The weather derailed that, and so we'll see how he does utilize it. I mean, he obviously has Wednesdays, Saturdays. His big preoccupation, though, this week has been the immunity hearing that's happening at the Supreme Court on Thursday.
I want to bring in senior legal analyst Ellie Honig here. Ellie, because this hearing is about to begin here, and if you can just walk us through the mechanics of how this will play. Both sides coming in with arguments they want to make. The judge may be coming in with something he wants to say right out of the gate.
Yeah, John, I suspect that's what's going to happen. Now, both sides have already put in their legal briefs here. The DA started by making a motion to the judge saying, Judge, we want you to find him officially in contempt of your gag ruling. The prosecutors cited 3 examples of Donald Trump allegedly violating the gag order in their first motion. Then they put in a second motion saying, and here's 7 more. The first one was based on several social media posts by Donald Trump, including one in which he called Michael Cohen, quote, a sleazebag and a serial perjurer. The second batch included a whole string of True Social posts where Donald Trump, again, primarily focused on Michael Cohen. The judge will probably, I would imagine, just stand up today and say, I'll hear a quick argument from both sides. DA, I have your brief. Anything you want to ask? Donald Trump, your team, Todd Blanche, is there anything you want to say in your defense? I'm not sure exactly. I think the interesting part's going to be to hear how does Donald Trump's team defend his statements that seem to, at least some of them, go squarely against the gag order.
And Paula Reed, you're here with me. You've had some reporting on what the Trump team will say affirmatively. Any sense of how they will defend against the comments he made last night about the jury?
So, for example, I think last night, with those comments specifically, they're going to argue that he was talking about the demographics of New York. And it's irrefutable, right, that this is a predominantly Democratic district. They knew that going in. That's how they will argue that specific instance. Now, that is not one of the ones that has been listed so far, but hey, they may add it to the list. Now, when it comes to the other instances, you have to kind of go post or attack by attack. One of the ones that I think is most troubling is where Trump tried to quote a Fox News host who suggested that there were Democratic activists being recruited.
Let me just jump in right there. You
Yeah.
can see on the left-hand side of our screen, and we are getting reports from inside the courtroom as this hearing takes place. The judge is on the bench, and he has said, "Good morning, Mr. Trump."
And apparently now Trump is seated alone at the defense attorney. They're all at the table. They're all going to step to the side and have a meeting. It's unclear what that meeting is about. But as I was saying, one of the most troubling posts is where Trump quotes a Fox News host talking about how Democratic activists had been recruited to be on the jury. The reason that is concerning is because that could be a dog whistle, right, for people to maybe attack or try to intimidate members of the jury. And that's why I think the judge should pay particular attention to any violations or any suggestions about anything related to the jury.
Well, and what's interesting about how this is all playing out is they're going to go into a separate room to have this discussion over the hearing and whether or not he violated the gag order. Trump himself, though he tried to be party to some of these, he is not actually doing that in this case. So he will kind of be alone at the defense table while the attorneys are the ones hashing this out with the judge.
And you can see right there, one prosecutor asked to approach the bench, and now all the lawyers have left the courtroom to sidebar.
But Donald Trump is alone at the defense table.
I'm sure he loves that.
Which is just kind of a remarkable moment as we're talking about what this looks like and seeing the first true 2 days of this trial. He is seated alone at the defense table as prosecutors and his defense attorneys are kind of making both of their cases to the judge over whether or not he violated the gag order and what the punishment for that's going to be if he did.